Section 87 gives an exemption to police officers for speed limits, red traffic lights, use them as giveaway line, and some traffic signs which they can treat as a giveaway. Unfortunately, Section 87 doesn't give an exemption for either driving without due care and attention or dangerous driving. Until 2010, the prosecutors in the courts of the land could bear into mind a police officer's training. In the case of Bannister, which is a case in South Wales, changed all of that. An advanced driver who'd newly been qualified, a sergeant who newly qualified as an advanced driver, who unfortunately had a quite serious accident, no other vehicles involved, and wrote off his BMW patrol car on the M4. The result of that was that he was prosecuted for dangerous driving. He was sent to jail for a short period of time by the judge, so he'd obviously upset the judge. It meant that a driver's training, which previously had been always taken into consideration, was then dispensed with. Every police driver, every emergency driver, in fact not just the police, was to be treated as the same as any other driver under the Highway Code, which in itself is a ridiculous statement, because if you have a police driver who is, just example, a response driver, their job is to respond to a call, and by the nature of what you say responding means they exceed the speed limit. Earlier last year there was a case of Hill and Houghton, which is a case from Hampshire, where the police driver, who was a police advanced driver, his operator was a police advanced driver, burglar who's just stolen someone's car from their house, and they happen to be sitting up, the car's circulated, car goes past them, they engage in pursuit. Pursuit lasts about 3.5 minutes, nothing of any great consequence, no accident, no other persons involved, no injury to anybody else at all. As a result of that, the bandit car, that's the car they're pursuing, goes through a level crossing and the police driver terminates the pursuit. Hampshire, unfortunately, took the view that their driver had driven dangerously. Well, under the law, he had, but obviously no consideration was made for his training, what he was doing, the fact that he'd driven according to his training, etc., etc. The passenger was taken to the magistrates' court. At the magistrates' court, the passenger's offence was dismissed by the circuit judge, said no, there's no evidence to answer. Unfortunately, for the driver, that didn't stop there, and it went to the Crown Court. Went to the Crown Court and went about 3/4 of the way through, and eventually it was thrown out. What it brought to a head there was every single person who was an emergency service driver who was driving for their living to an emergency call was not covered to drive in a manner that was either without due care or dangerously. So what's happened from that is there was a case conference represented by a barrister called Mark Aldred, who interestingly enough is an ex-police officer, so had a very good understanding of what had gone on. There has been a campaign from Alan Jones and myself and others within the roads policing world to have an amendment to the law. So Section 87 will still be there, but we'll now have an amendment under the Road Safety Act of 2006 to give emergency service drivers, that's police officers, fire, ambulance, the army, the SAS, soccer, all the people who would drive in an emergency who have been properly trained to drive in a manner outside of the Highway Code. That has been sanctioned by Keir Starmer, it's been sanctioned by the Minister, Mr Penning, Department of Transport, and it's going to go through the House of Commons to be passed as an amendment to the law. So that should bridge the gap that's been there probably for 30, 40 years, where everybody has believed that actually they could drive in a manner that was appropriate, and clearly the law doesn't allow it. So everybody from the bottom to the top of the organisation is in play for this, and to make sure that it's amended and it's changed properly so people are covered is absolutely essential.